So some of the guys...
People were out there doing them with a sled?
Yeah, a bit. It was just a little extra. For example, myself, I also liked because you also had rings, and you get ring people who could work out on the rings, and also you had the ropes.
So you had the hybrid of the gymnastics activity with weightlifting.
That's right. You did. It was just there. I liked rope. So I'd see the rope, and just in addition, I'd just look at it, and suddenly I'd say, gee, I think I'll go up. And just boom, 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 just fly right up the rope. Literally, with your arm sort of straight over your head. I mean, we could pull, so we were strong.
Yeah.
And we viewed it kind of, again, as a workout. It felt good, and it was also a workout.
Yeah.
So that was part of it. Everything you can do. And then, maybe some days do a couple of miles in the sand. So some days it would just be near the water's edge. You'd get a couple of miles of a jog and pop right into the ocean. Other days I might like to do wind sprints for that same distance. It was like about 1.25 miles one way, 1.25 miles back. So I wind sprint, for a good distance, going back. Other times it would just be running in the soft sand or running in the hard sand.
Okay.
This is what we did.
Why do you think Muscle Beach became such a destination?
Well, for one thing, it was publicized in the magazine, and the magazine was worldwide. Okay, it was America, and you had the best bodybuilders here. And many times you'd get some of the best ones at least to come and visit. Didn't mean they all lived there, but they'd come and visit.
Like John Grimmick and people like that.
And later, Steve Reeves. You get some of the California names.
Okay.
Reg Park would come down. George Eifferman would come out. Eifferman was from Philadelphia, for example, and so on. So they came from all over. And everybody would like to be outdoors, if you could.
Yeah.
Just, it was like a holiday.
How about the Hollywood influence?
With the bodybuilders, I would say it was almost nil.
But Hollywood and Muscle Beach?
I could think of myself, there was no real attraction.
Okay.
We worked out.
So the years that you were around from 57, were you there to the end?
Yeah, I was out of town when they closed it because I was on tour wrestling up in Oregon, working in the Pacific Northwest, that whole area, Oregon, Washington.
Do you have any observations about the closing of Muscle Beach? How, why, when, where? Any reflections?
Oh, I remember very well why, because some of the guys, they just left town. There were a couple of runaway girls, simply. As I was told, I think they were 12, 13-year-olds. So anyway, I'm assuming, I didn't know exactly what took place, but I'm just hearsay. There was, let's say, sexual play that took place, and this was not an unusual thing down there. And anyway, the police got wind of it somehow. I don't remember how or why. But soon as they heard that, this was the fait accompli they'd been waiting for years, because they somehow, the city fathers, didn't like somehow this operation going. I think it wasn't commercial for them or something. When in point of fact, most of the guys worked jobs. They'd either work by day, and many of them worked swing shift, so they'd come down in their earlier hours. I mean, everybody made a living. So it wasn't quite like it looked, but in spare time, this is where they liked spending their time. So
and in that conservative era of the 50s,
yes,
that the city of Santa Monica was not liberal, it was conservative.
Oh, no, not
very resistant to this free-spirited place.
Yes. And yet, on the weekends, on a nice weekend, or especially a holiday, the place was packed with people in town who knew where they came from everywhere, we could say. But the place was packed. If you've seen some of the photos, you can see. It was as packed or more so than a Coney Island Sunday in New York.
And so techniques of training, good camaraderie, sharing of ideas?
Yes. I mean, simply put, there was nice camaraderie. I mean, some of the boys bonded more with each other, some of us, we were Easterners. So we had a whole bunch, but we made friends with people from all over. It didn't really matter. I remember I made a good friend, he was from Pennsylvania, and so on. You made friends everywhere.
Yeah.
Just the bodybuilding brought you together, and it introduced various people, and you many times you found you had things in common too, at least in some facets. And so you had the one, and then you had some spin-offs.
Cool. Now, Joe Gold, were you there when Joe Gold opened the gym in 65?
Yeah, I was out of town right then, but,
Okay.
but as soon as I got back, I heard about it, and we just walked right in.
In between 1958 and 1965, Where did people train?
Let's go back a moment now. What year was that specifically? Did you say?
59, 58
Okay,
to 65.
okay, I got you. Well then, what they did was then they got the equipment back and they rented a place, as I remember it, and they made a private club, kind of like indoors. So I remember one.
Where was that?
At Santa Monica, locally, right, not very far away, within blocks away. Then another one they opened was it was called the Surf Rider Hotel, which was just it was Main Street and let's say Promenade. That was it. It was sort of like Pacific ran into what you called Main, and it was right on Main that you entered, and you had a big hotel right there, and evidently they had some space to rent. And so they rented it out to the boys, and everybody paid so much dues, and that's where you worked out. So that went for a long time too. There was also other gyms available. So that was the era also of you had Vic Tanny.
Did you train at Vic Tanny's gyms?
Absolutely. And then they closed, and the American Health Studios opened up, you see. And American Health began a chain also, and some of the guys began to work for them. Joe Gold worked for them. He ran one, he was the manager in one in Santa Monica, for example. And so we drifted to all these. Some days I'd work out in one, some another. I used to break it up, so I used to work out every day. So I'd say, all right, I think I'll do the lower body, I'll go over and I'll do it over at the Tanny's or American Health, because one became the other, one became the phone.
Okay. And where were the Tanny gyms?
All over, nationwide.
I mean in Santa Monica.
The original one
Fourth
was
and
on
Broadway?
4th and Broadway. That was what they called almost the old dungeon, and you walk down.
Okay. And then, was that one the first or the second?
I don't know.
Okay.
That I don't know. It was there when I got here in 1952, and I started to work out. I worked out there, and I worked out there in 1953. In fact, in 53, I did my heaviest training, because that's when we were all training for Mr. Southern California.